So good to have you join us today. Hello and welcome to Business Daily. I'm Lee Ji-yoon in Seoul. Before we get started, let's first get a quick check of today's highlights. A long-awaited turnaround for Korea's exports, with August figures showing outbound shipments leaped back into positive territory for the first time in 20 months. With the world's advanced economy stuck in sluggish growth, there are high hopes that this year's G20 summit in China will help the global economy get back on its feet again. We'll sit down with an expert to talk more about this. Korea's exports have finally made a turnaround, snapping a record 19 straight months of decline. For more on what could be the start of a new momentum for the country's exports, here's our Kim Min-ji.
It's a rise for the first time in 20 months. The Trade Ministry says Korea's outbound shipments rose an estimated 2.6% in August from a year earlier to $40.1 billion. After falling for 19 straight months since January of last year, the turnaround provides a glint of light for the country's exports, once the economy's main pillar.
We saw a rise in the number of workdays, the strongest performance this year in chips and petrochemicals, which are part of the 8 key export items that saw growth. Unit prices also shifted to positive gains of 6.1%.
In terms of the country's 13 key export items, outbound shipments edged up 1.7% last month from a year ago, in stark contrast to the 12% fall in July. Exports of semiconductors, petrochemical products, and flat panel displays also hit the highest monthly value for this year. Imports also rose just slightly, but for the first time in nearly 2 years. Inbound shipments edged up 0.1% to $34.8 billion. That means a trade surplus of $5.3 billion, extending the surplus streak for a 55th straight month. While the ministry says expected improvements in unit prices and volume for key items paint a positive outlook for the latter half of the year, downside risks do linger. A possible U.S. interest rate hike could trigger market volatility and slow the global economic recovery, while a prolonged strike in Korea's auto industry could take a toll on exports. The government says it'll keep close tabs on these uncertainties and introduce necessary support measures to keep export growth in positive territory. Kim Min-ji, Business Daily.
Meanwhile, consumer price growth in Korea remains sluggish due to low global oil prices. Statistics Korea says prices went up 0.4% in August from a year earlier, the slowest pace in almost a year and a half. It also marks the fourth straight month of prices inching up in the 0% range. Prices of petroleum products dropped nearly 9% from a year ago, dragging down overall inflation by around 0.4 percentage point. But the blistering heat pushed up prices of agricultural, livestock, and fish products by 1%. Fisheries, in particular, surged to 6.5%. Hanjin Shipping, once Korea's biggest shipping company, filed for court receivership on Wednesday, and the repercussions are already being felt around the world. Our Hwang Ho-jun reports.
Less than 24 hours since the trade giant of Korea filed for bankruptcy protection, and the news has shocked the global trade market. Ports around the world, including those in China, Spain, and the U.S., have denied access to Hanjin ships over fears that Hanjin's creditors could seize the cargo vessels before they dock, not to mention the ships potentially not being able to pay their fees. In fact, a smaller-sized Hanjin vessel, the Hanjin Rome, was seized by a creditor in Singapore late on Monday. Experts say more docks around the world will follow suit. The Wall Street Journal reported that U.S. exporters are jostling to rebook containers with other carriers to reload their cargoes, ahead of the retail boom that accompanies Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, and Christmas. Hanjin Shipping has halted its operations, and with global market share of 2.9%, the drop in tonnage will likely lead to skyrocketing costs. A Korean court will determine as early this week whether Hanjin should be liquidated or given a chance to restructure and possibly survive. Hwang Ho-jun, Business Daily.
Prosecutors are widening their ongoing corruption probe into Korean retail giant Lotte Group. The founder's eldest son and former vice chairman of Lotte Holdings in Japan, Shin Dong-ju, appeared for questioning this morning at the Supreme Prosecutor's office. He's accused of embezzlement and receiving millions of dollars in unearned pay from the group's business units. Questions will likely focus on how much money he received and where it was spent, but prosecutors are also expected to grill him about other allegations, including illegal financial transactions among Lotte businesses and tax evasion. Shin is suspected of receiving upwards of $35 million over several years from Lotte Engineering and Construction, Lotte Hotel, and other family firms. Samsung Electronics has put the brakes on all domestic shipments of its new flagship phablet, the Galaxy Note 7, saying that it wants to do more quality control testing amid reports of exploding batteries. Our Kwon Jang-ho tells us more.
It's been less than 2 weeks since the launch of the Galaxy Note 7. But now, as a precautionary measure, shipments of the Samsung phablet are being halted in Korea. Samsung Electronics is looking to investigate a handful of claims that have emerged on social media, saying the phablet had overheated and exploded while it was being charged. Samsung said it will take a look at those phones which were affected and carry out additional tests on product quality. The tech giant has not given any details on what testing it plans to carry out, but the problem appears to stem from the USB-C port, the first time the connector has been used on a Samsung smartphone. It's also unclear whether the issue is a software one, which means it could potentially be fixed with a firmware update, or whether it's a hardware one, which could mean a more costly product recall. The cause could also be non-compliant third-party cables, which have caused problems to other smartphone and laptop products in recent months. Samsung has not stated whether shipments to any international markets have been affected, with different regions having different variants of the phone. Demand for the Note 7 has been strong, with pre-orders reaching 400,000 units in Korea alone, double that of the previous incarnation, the Note 5. But with Apple expected to announce its new iPhone next week, the pressure is on for Samsung to deal with the issue quickly to maintain its sales momentum in the second half of the year. Kwon Jang-ho, Business Daily.
China is gearing up to host its first G20 summit that's just around the corner now, and Beijing is determined to make the event a success, shutting down factories and tightening security. Our Hwang Jae follows this report from Hangzhou.
Hangzhou, located 2 hours away by car from Shanghai, is a city renowned for being one of China's 7 ancient capitals. It boasts its picturesque natural scenery like here at the West Lake. But the city is not just about scenic attractions. It's also home to the headquarters of Alibaba, China's biggest e-commerce company. The local GDP ranks 10th among all of the country's 600-plus cities. And this week, Hangzhou will bring together leaders from around the world for the G20 summit. Through this event, China hopes to put on display its rise as a global power by successfully seeing through the international gathering without a hitch. Security checks are extremely heavy here in Hangzhou in eastern China ahead of the G20 summit set to take place in early September. Security guards and police officers are seen every 5 to 10 meters around this Olympic sports center that you see behind me, where the meeting will take place. A drive around the city shows eerily empty but pristine streets ready to greet visitors. Factories are closed for the first 7 days of the month, designated a temporary holiday by the government for local residents. This is all to make sure the city is free of safety risks. Although a disruption to people's everyday lives, we found most enduring with pride.
It's for safety reasons, and the event also brings vitality to the country. I can't understand.
I support the event taking place here, so it's okay.
It's really nice that the event raised our reputation locally and internationally. Residents here are glad that Hangzhou is hosting the G20. We hope to see more of these events.
Only a couple of days now remain until the event. During the annual meeting, world leaders from 20 different countries, as well as leaders from global organizations like the UN and the IMF, will discuss issues centering on low growth woes threatening the world economy in hopes of finding a common solution. Hwang Jie, Business Daily, Hangzhou.
Under the theme of Toward an Innovative, Invigorated, Interconnected, and Inclusive World Economy, leaders of the group of 20 countries will meet in China this weekend. Now, the summit comes at a time when the world economy continues to face growing uncertainties and lackluster growth. For more on what we can expect from this year's G20 summit, Professor Kim Se-won from Ewha Women's University joins us in the studio today. So good to see you.
Pleasure to be here.
All right, so 8 years ago, the first G20 summit in Washington helped countries to coordinate a response to the financial meltdown. Can you tell us more about this?
Well, 2008's G20 meeting was the first summit G20 meeting. Previous G20 meeting was a meeting between the finance ministers. After that, G20 summit meeting became one of the most influential meeting in global economy and politics. Now, under financial crisis of 2008, for example, they had a prompt reaction for coordination of the expansionary monetary policy. So that coordination of the policy spirit has been maintained until today.
Now, and as China prepares to host this first ever G20 summit, what do you think Beijing is looking to get out of this meeting?
Well, in diplomatic meeting, actually diplomatic meeting is quite different from our general meeting. The presider has a huge power because they set the agenda of the meeting.
Right.
And in doing so, they can incorporate the nation's interest on the agenda. So this time, China became the presider of the G20 meeting, and China's agenda includes recovering global economy and recovering global trade. And China believes that this is a great opportunity to show off their economic growth and their friendly attitude to neighbor countries.
Now, how is the summit expected to address protectionism at a time when a growing number of countries are riding on the anti-trade sentiment?
Well, in previous G20 summit meetings, the importance of the free trade has been many times clearly agreed between member countries. However, recently we saw Brexit and two U.S. presidential candidates very aggressive protectionism. So this time there will be another strong announcement for denounce protectionism.
Now, what other agreements do you think then countries will reach at the summit?
Well, this time member countries are pretty much avoiding political issues like the conflicts over South China Sea. Instead, they're focusing on economic issues. And the top priority is given to recovering global economy. So I believe that there will be another agreements or policy suggestions for policy coordination, very stronger than before, coordination between member countries.
Now, I think we can say that another goal for leaders for the upcoming G20 summit is to seek for new growth engines for the world economy. What can we expect at this front?
Well, one of the agenda of the G20 meeting is innovative growth. And regarding the candidate industries for innovative growth is, of course, IT and bioindustries. But we know that some countries, only some countries have the power or resources to develop these IT and medical and bioindustries. So there will be policy suggestions on sharing this kind of resources like the patents, people, and the resources on high-tech industries.
Now, President Park is expected to attend the G20, and she's also expected to go to Russia and Laos as well. So and she has been continuing her economic diplomacy during her term very actively. So how effective have her state visits been in boosting the local economy, you think?
Well, I believe that President of Korea should make more visits foreign countries because Korea is the most dependent to foreign countries between G20. So I believe that one of the most important job of the President of the Korea is expanding business opportunities in foreign countries. So regarding this matter, President Park actually has been pretty much successful in expanding business opportunities with Iran, Africa, and Mexico, and in many other countries.
So we can expect more from Russia and Laos as
Exactly.
well, you think? All right. Well, what do you think Korea should push for then during the G20 gathering to make sure that it helps to revitalize the current sluggish local economy?
Well, under the situation of decreasing export and imports, the role of Korea in G20 summit meeting is stopping spread of the protectionism. So Korea should be deriving something stronger and unanimous agreements on stopping protectionism between member countries.
All right. We'll definitely keep an eye on what comes out of the meeting over the weekend. Thank you so much for coming in today.
Thank you very much.
And that brings us to the end, but we'll be back tomorrow with more business news that matters to you. So don't forget to tune in then. Thanks for watching, and bye-bye for now.